Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, your resource for all things business, brand, and leadership. We are excited you have decided to join us today.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Elevate Podcast. I am Robert Kaelin here again with
Mike Newman. Great to be with you guys again today.
Yeah, we've got an awesome episode planned. We have a business coach, an idea strategist. You know, this guy is doing coaching and speaking and masterminds and conferences and all sorts of things going on in his world because he helps remarkable leaders navigate the galaxy of entrepreneurship. And I am so honored to have my friend Terry Weaver on the podcast. Terry, thanks for being here, my friend.
Man, thanks for having me. Thanks for actually reading my stuff.
Yeah.
It's always weird when people introduce you. It's like, wow, you used the introduction. Congratulations. If this was like a dentist office, I'd let you go over and get a prize out of the box.
You get to pick whatever I want. I love it.
So there's probably something on my desk you could have.
That's great. I feel like we were just talking about that. Hopefully it's not like a garbage bag or something.
Yep. Nope. I've got a banana ball here from the Savannah Bananas.
There you go.
Bananas, all right.
My favorite faux baseball team. That I think we'll probably talk about it when we get to talking about the thing. So, but I think that's another episode. We're doing a couple of these. I'm excited.
We are. Yeah. I'm glad that you're here. So Terry, tell us a little bit about you. Our audience, you know, they're business owners, they're entrepreneurs. They have their thing. And like, how did you get started with what you're doing here?
I was originally a youth pastor. And in 2001, my wife and I moved to Nashville because I was at the time I had begun speaking full time at conferences and festivals and colleges and some school assemblies. But at the time I was working in the music industry, and that's kind of what brought us to Nashville. It's kind of also known as Music City. And so I was working in the music industry and moved here. And then pretty much, kind of stayed on that path until the late single digits of the 2000s. And kind of started to realize that I noticed threads. And one of the threads I noticed is that everywhere I was going, I was solving a problem for someone. And the second thing I learned was that everywhere I was with a band, that I was really just helping a brand. And so through that process, a buddy of mine had just read Michael Hyatt's platform and was like, "Hey man, do you know Hyatt?" I'm like, "I see him across town. We live in the same city. I know what it is. I know Thomas Nelson. Can you help me do this platform thing and start a membership site?" I was like, "Sure, man, that's easy. If we could just figure out what the software is, we can do that." And we did it, and we were super, super successful at it. We made a lot of money really quickly, or at least we made a lot of money for him really quickly. And in that process, I realized that I was kind of the one that was doing a lot of the ghostwriting for him and helping him kind of, create his brand, and realize like, wow, I wonder if I did this for myself, if I did this for other people, what would happen? So I started kind of messing around with like some coaching and some masterminds. And we did an event together, and all of those things were all just preparing me for what I was eventually going to launch out on my own and do. A lot of times when we have big dreams and big visions, we tend to get stuck behind the safety of someone else. We get stuck behind the safety of like a 9-to-5 paycheck, or we get stuck behind the safety of hiding behind another business or another brand. And it's really easy in this day and age because it always just, every day if you turn on the news, which is something I don't do very often, the world is on fire. There is something different else about the world, and you can always find parts of the world that are on fire. And I decided I wanted to focus on the good that I could do in the world and the difference that I could make in the world and how I could best serve people. And I can't solve every problem that I know about. And I think that's one of the most unfortunate things about kind of the cancel culture era that we're living through, is we expect everyone to have an opinion about everything. It's like, I don't know enough about the geopolitical state of the border of Israel and Gaza to have a real firm opinion on that, other than, I know in the Bible, God said his people were his chosen people, and I'm good. Like I've got that part down, but I just, I mean, and you guys have seen there, we walked through a rough, a global crisis where everybody was an epidemiologist and an expert on everything. I started to learn the things that I'm really great at. And one of the things I'm really great at is helping people discover why they're here and what it is that's their superpower that they can unleash on the world. And I feel like in a lot of ways, one of my main roles, and this is kind of leading and describing everything I do, is to be a lot like Nick Fury in the Avengers. Is that he's assembling remarkable people to unleash the thing that they may not have even known that they had, that can actually make a difference on the planet.
Yeah, that's a great point, Terry, that you make, because I think all of us can go back in our lives and we've all kind of had that Nick Fury person who's come along and said, hey, have you ever thought about, certainly had that in my life, and other people who see things in you that you don't see. So
Right.
maybe share with our audience a little bit about, how do you tell that special talent, that special ability that you see in somebody that they don't see, that Nick Fury element that you have?
Man, sometimes we don't necessarily know how we get the gifts that we have.
Yeah.
It's just we've been given something and we're just stewarding over it. And, I definitely see it. And I'll kind of break it in a little bit. It's if you talk to me for very long, your audience may have already figured it out. And if you're watching this on video, my office is kind of chaotic. I'm ADHD. I was in those classes growing up where kids didn't necessarily. I was the square peg in the round hole. And a lot of times we tend to use those things as our excuse, as our pathway to victimhood. And I've chosen to use those things as my superpower. And one of the things that the way my mind works, and I think that there's a lot of people right now that have kind of some, one of the phrases I actually love right now is they're a little neurospicy. Their mind works a little different. They're neurodivergent. They have a different way of thinking. And, the different way that you think is actually what actually enables you, and I have a unique gift to be able to be right there on the surface with you, but I also have the ability to have a 30,000 foot view pretty quickly. And if I trust my gut and my intuition, and I'm a chunky fella, so my gut's pretty sizable. So I've learned that if I don't trust it, when I don't trust it, it gets in my way. And, I know how to take the things. And man, when you do this long enough, you're able to see patterns in people that they may not necessarily see. And obviously I study, different modalities that are used in, psychology and different processes and, frameworks and, but if you go through, when I was writing my book, Making Elephants Fly, one of the things that I noticed is one of the things that's a core value that I noticed is that every great leader that I have admire, every mentor that I've had up close and from a distance, all of them had a commonality, and that was that they focused on their strengths and not their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And you could find that from Zig Ziglar to John Maxwell to Erwin McManus to Guy Kawasaki to Steve Jobs you can find it at almost every level. Walt Disney. You can find it at almost every level of life and business that there is.
I think that's wonderful and so unbelievably true. To focus on our strengths and mitigate our weaknesses. It's one of the things that we're often told to do is, hey, you're weak in this area. You should focus on it so you can get better. We see this all through going to school. You've got 6 different subjects and you have to get good grades in all of them. And, some of them are just not going to be the greatest at because it's not your thing.
And that may be the biggest flaw in our education system to date is, if you think about all of the skills that kids don't come out of school with, all of the useful ones, they don't learn. And, I remember my favorite one was my math teacher. You won't have a calculator with you everywhere you go. And I'm like, told you so. Like, and I think I was, back in I was a kid. I think the best thing that anyone can do for their kids or the people that they're working with or anyone they're even mentoring is to help them discover what they're good at and give them permission to get obsessed about it.
Yeah, that's good.
And because the people, I mentioned John Maxwell. John Maxwell is obsessed with being a leader. He's obsessed with helping leaders. He knows everything there is to know about leadership. And yet, every day he gets up ready to learn more. I'm going to guess John Maxwell's probably not very good at math. I'm going to guess John Maxwell's probably not very good at carpentry. So he doesn't spend a lot of his time and energy on those things.
Yeah.
And I think we get bogged down by a lot of things that just aren't important. And unfortunately, we teach kids these things. And so they come out of school learning these skills. And, and I think a lot of, to go back and answer your question, one of the ways you help is that a lot of times that's helping people unlearn. Because one of the things that I learned when I wrote my book, Making Elephants Fly, I learned this thing that elephants do a little bit in the wild, but they use in captivity to train elephants, and it's called tailing. And it's where you'll see two elephants walking together, and you'll see the elephant in the front will wrap its trunk around the tail of the elephant in front of them. That's how they kind of go down the line. So if you ever see, back when the Ringling Brothers had elephants in the circus, you would literally see them. I remember going to downtown Nashville and watching them do the elephant parade that they still did up until the very end. The elephants would walk from the train station down to the arena, and they would walk that way. And, we do that with kids as early as kindergarten. We teach them to get in line right away. And so a lot of the work that I do is teaching people to get out of line, teaching people to chase the things that matter to them, the things that they really care about, the things that are super important to them, the things that really just light them up, and the things that they, deeply, deeply matter and deeply resonate with them, because it's really easy for us to end up chasing what other people want for our life rather than the life that we desire.
Yeah, I don't remember who said it. It's something along the lines of, if you don't play your own game, you'll be a pawn in someone else's. And that's so true, that you don't want to be a pawn in someone else's life. You want to design the life that you want to live. And what does it look like to do that and find your superpower, your thing?
Yeah, and we're watching that play out in our community right now. One of our speakers who's been a part of this community, Liz Wilcox, is on Survivor this season. And, Survivor very much is a game where you have to go in with your own set of rules. I even posted this during watching it last night when it was airing, that, you're either going to play the game or the game is going to play you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people are getting played by life. They're getting played by the pursuit of the American dream, or they're getting played by the pursuit of, chasing a safe career path, or in leadership and entrepreneurship they're scary, scary things. I mean, we live in a world where there's a lot of uncertainty in our world, and our job as leaders is to try to create certainty for people. And that requires a lot of bravery. That requires a different way of thinking.
Absolutely. There's so much courage that entrepreneurs take or have embody, when they take big risks because of something that they believe in.
Yeah.
And I love watching you kind of pull that out of people. When I attended the thing back in November, that's one of the things that I picked up on is just, and I know I wanted to save this for the next episode, but I'm going to say it anyway. One of the things that I picked up on was your ability to create a community of people who are I don't want to say the word fearless, because they're not fearless. They're pushing through their fear,
Mm-hmm.
and they're overcoming that, which I think is a really unique thing. It's a unique thing to see.
Fear. In fact, one of our guys posted about fear earlier today, and I remember a conversation I had with Seth Godin on my podcast. And fear is it can be our worst enemy, but it's also what keeps us from jumping off bridges. It's what keeps us from running in front of cars. And so I think fear is something we have to manage. And, one of the best ways to create a community that handles and manages fear is that the community collectively has a narrative to know how they're going to handle it, because they know that the safety that someone else will be there to catch them. Someone told me one time that people will come to events, they'll come to online courses, they'll come for content, but they'll stay for community.
Yeah, so true.
And so many people are trying to monetize community. Like it's a buzzword. Anytime something becomes a buzzword, it's funny, because it's like, story is one of those words. It's like, man, story has been my whole life from the beginning, right? And so when things become like hip and trendy, it always cracks me up, because it can be very distracting for people who are already doing it. And community is I get asked a lot of how do I nurture that, and a lot of it, I think it comes down to my core people that are in my mastermind groups, and people that do life on a regular basis. And I heard the quote that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. Yeah. And when I was writing my book, I didn't really understand that quote, because I'd heard it thrown around a lot. But, context is really important for quotes and for scripture and for a lot of things. But when you take something and put it into context, when you take that quote and put it into the context of the African savannah, which is where an African proverb would be from, Africa, when you take it and put it actually in the context of that situation, that if you want to go far, like, you literally need to be going with other people, because if you're the slowest person in the group, you're going to be the zebra that's for dinner tonight. And I'm writing my next book right now. I'm actually in the middle of 4 books, but that's a whole different. Speaking of ADD, I have 3 co-writing projects that I'm working on, and 1 book on my own that I'm working on. And I'm looking at lessons that we can learn on the Savannah. And one of the things that a lot of us don't think about, and it was actually in the movie, I'm obviously a Disney fan, but it was one of the core tenets and subject matters of the movie Lion King. It's you saw it in a Disney movie and didn't think it was real, but one lion can't outhunt a group of hyenas. One lion alone is hyena dinner. But a herd of lions is a different story. The hyenas scatter. And I think that there's too many people in life and in business that haven't understood how powerful it is, literally just to their very, very survival, of finding community, finding groups of people that they walk with and do life with, that genuinely care for them, that genuinely want their best. I had somebody, we had a mastermind call this week, and one of the guys said, what's interesting about this community, and the people, because we have people come in the community, they'll try it, and just like, it's not for me. And typically the people that don't make it are the people who I view community like a potluck. And, I view live events that are that way. I do my mastermind events that I do in luxury areas or cabins, or we've gone to Jamaica and we've done other things. And, a potluck, you always bring your best dish too. You always bring your best, and you come hoping that somebody else has made your favorite thing too. I grew up in the South, so that's, I've got a little different context. But there was always someone that made a good green bean casserole or good hash brown casserole, and you wanted that, right? And maybe the same thing applies to family reunions or family gatherings. You want Uncle Frank's mac and cheese. But you've got to bring something. And the people that don't tend to survive well in that context are people who are just showing up to get.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are all seasons where we show up kind of wounded, and it's like, oh, just bring some napkins. Stop by the grocery store and pick up napkins, and you'll be fine. We'll be good. You're bringing something. But when people are coming up to kind of like poach community, that's typically when people don't recognize that. It's why I've had several calls that I mentioned that I was having Robert going to be on your podcast, and it's like, oh man, I need to follow up with that guy. I liked that guy. That guy was generous. And that's not just your brand, that's who you are. Right? And when, a lot of, I mentioned cancel culture. One of my favorite conversations happened between two comedians. And one of the comedians who's more of a, kind of a rough around the edge guy said, cancel culture happens when who you say you are doesn't align with what you do. It's really just bad marketing. You're out of integrity of who you told the world you were going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, you showed up and you were generous and you served and you delivered. And, I commend you on that because that doesn't always happen. People oftentimes show up in a community wanting to see what they can get. And obviously you want to get value. You're taking your time and you're investing your time and your travel and time away from your friends and your family and the things that you care about to be someplace. So I want you to get something out of it. But, I think this better than anyone. The places that we go where we can show up with open hands rather than grabbing hands, we're going to walk away with a lot more.
Well, that's good. I think, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think the moment that we realize it's not about what you get, it's about what you give, and that, life changes for us, I think, honestly. And then the other piece you'd said when you're creating community that it's about caring for people. And I'll quote Maxwell because you've quoted him a couple of times, right? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I see that in your community that you've built with the thing, with your mastermind groups that I see online, and everybody really getting involved. And I think that that's really the core to it, right? Is that you genuinely care about the people that you're bringing in, which is a rarity. I truly see it as a rarity. I see a lot of people going, hey, if I bring you to my thing, what am I going to get for that? Mm-hmm. But you're going, hey, come to my thing and I want to give you, you are one of the most generous people that I've met. And you're doing, I noticed a lot of similarities in the things that we're doing on opposite ends of the country. And I was just fascinated to learn from you. And I've told Mike several times, like, oh, I learned this just from watching at a distance and then going and observing it. And so I want to commend you on that. I want to give our audience an opportunity to learn from you as well. How can they get in touch with you? How can they be a part of the Thing community?
Well, man, you can find that all about me at just terryweaver.com. You can get my podcast, the Making Elephants Fly podcast there. My book, Making Elephants Fly. I made it real easy, right? It's all there.
Yeah.
It's and kind of an intentional thing. That book's currently not on Amazon. It never has been because I wanted to connect with people in a way that I knew who they were. I could get them on my mailing list, not just to sell to them because I want to know who they are. I don't send a book out without a personal handwritten note. You get a little gift with every book I send just because it's something I do. It's part of who I am. And then The Thing, you can find that at thething.live. It links to both the Nashville and the Orlando event that we do.
Yeah, and I know that you've got a couple of things coming up, on the thing.live for people to check out. But what does that look like? Like, what are the dates for that, and where are they?
Nashville, we're in June 14th and 15th.
Okay.
And you can just go to thethingnashville.com, takes you directly there. And tickets are on sale. You can use the code podcast for a discount. And then the thing, Orlando, is November. It's a quiz. November 8, 9, and 10. We had to move our dates around a little bit for Veterans. Veterans Day and Halloween fell on weird days this year for some reason, and so we shifted. We had to shift a little bit, so we're a weekend later than we normally are.
Okay.
And that website is about to go up, and our speaker lineup is starting to really shape up for that. And it's just going to be fantastic.
Love it.
I'm just super excited about, all of the people that say yes to coming and giving and pouring in. In fact, by the time this episode airs, you and I recorded a live episode for my podcast at the thing. I think you're like episode 103, and
okay.
I just released episode 100 last week. So 2 or 3 weeks from the time we actually recorded this, you should be up and live, and people can hear our conversation.
Wonderful.
And actually get it out of the world. That's kind of the weird thing about podcasting, is you're always trying to be like, trying to be ahead, but also like technology fails, and then podcasting has been an interesting, just one of the favorite things I do in life, but also I sort of fell out of love with it for a season, especially during the pandemic, when everything we did was what we're doing here, and it's just like, oh man, I got fatigued.
Yeah, so sick of not being with people,
Right, and so like I've doubled down, and that's why I do live events, man. And we were one of those crazy people that still did an event in 2020. Our Orlando event used to be in May, and we pushed it to November of that year, which is why the thing is in November. Now we just left it there. But if you go, my community begged me to still do it. They're like, dude, you're a smart man. You can figure out how to do something. And so I found a big, massive luxury home with like 20 bedrooms, and we crammed in it. It had a media room that sat 50. And so we capped it at 50, and that's what we had. And it everyone's like, can we do that again? And I was like, man, that was a thing and a place and time that we can never recreate. Because all of those people that owned those houses, no one was coming, no one was traveling then.
Yeah.
And so, well, man, thanks for asking all of that and inviting your audience. I love to invite new people and getting new people. I love where you're from. I love the Pacific Northwest. It's one of my favorite parts of the country to travel to. My mother-in-law just sold her property outside of Vancouver Island, and so I was in and out of Bellingham or Seattle for the last 10 years, almost once or twice a year. Cool. moving her back and forth. So we've gotten to know the Pacific Northwest, and don't tell Boston.
Beautiful.
Don't tell Boston, but I think your chowder's better.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I love it. Well, hey, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you on here, Terry. I thank you for sharing with us. And I'm looking forward to next week when we have you on again. For awesome. Our listeners out there, we are so glad that you've been on this podcast. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. And we will see you on the next one. Until then, take care. God bless.
You guys, have a great day.
Thank you for joining us. Our hope is this episode has been helpful for you today. If it's impacted you in some way, we encourage you to share it with someone. To receive a direct notification of our next episode, click the follow button on your favorite app or platform. You can also watch each episode on YouTube. The links are in the description. If you want to connect with us on a deeper level, go to countercultureleadership.com/resources. We'll see you next week on the Elevate Podcast.